The world before maps learned its borders by the tread of boots and the clash of bronze. Empires rose and fell on fields of dust and blood, while certain armies became names spoken in whispers and prayers, or in curses. Tonight we travel back through thunder and smoke to meet 5 forces that filled ancient hearts with a single simple fear: that they would be next. This is not a ranking of skill alone, nor of size. These are armies that shaped history by how they fought, by the terror they inspired, and by the echoes they left in the stories of their enemies. For each, we will trace their roots, unspool their tactics, relive their most fearful moments, and ask what made them so terrifying. Our first thunder is the roar of chariots and ironclad discipline. The Assyrians, whose empire learned terror as a tool. Born in northern Mesopotamia, the Assyrian state transformed into a military bureaucracy. Kings like Ashurnasirpal II and Tiglath-Pileser III turned conquest into administration. Every conquest fed the machine: prisoners, tribute, engineers, and siegecraft. Their army was organized, professional, and relentlessly mobile. It was not a mass of volunteers but a system. A pipeline of men, weapons, and knowledge directed by a centralized state that measured victory and permanent control. Assyrians married new technologies with ruthless doctrine. Iron weapons, composite bows, disciplined infantry, cavalry detachments, and the deadly paired use of chariots and siege engines made their approach clinical. They refined siege warfare: sappers undermining walls, battering rams smashing gates, mobile towers rising alongside fortifications. Engineers carved holes where walls once stood, and the king's command turned engineering into a weapon. Psychological warfare was as deliberate as any tactic: deportations, publicized brutalities, and carved monuments showing flayed enemies. Fear itself was wielded like a spear. Their campaigns read like an instruction manual for terror. The reliefs from Lachish show captives bundled together, paraded and punished, their defeat displayed for every onlooker to witness. Entire populations were relocated. Rebellions were answered with public mutilation and spectacle. These acts were not random cruelty, but messages, designed to prevent another city from thinking revolt worthwhile. At the fall of Babylon, Assyrian record-keeping and the bitter memory of their sieges made resistance seem a personal invitation to ruin. To meet an Assyrian army was to face an industrialized hunger for order, efficient, brutal, and creative in cruelty. Their terror lay in inevitability. You could not outlast their machine. From engineered terror we moved to austere discipline. Sparta produced a warrior culture whose silence and iron order inspired dread across Greece. Sparta's life revolved around war. From childhood, Spartan males entered the agoge, a harsh training system that forged boys into soldiers. The state replaced family ties with collective identity. The individual existed to strengthen the phalanx. Spartan culture elevated collective honor above the self. Retreat was unthinkable, and the shaping of courage into habit was as important as armor or spear. At the heart of Spartan power stood the hoplite phalanx. Heavy bronze shields overlapping, long spears, bristling like a living wall. The phalanx demanded discipline, coordination, and trust. A single wavering man could create a seam that would end in slaughter. So Spartans trained until cohesion became second nature. When they advanced, they were not merely soldiers. They were a moving barricade, a mass of polished bronze and practiced rhythm. Their tactics were simple and devastating: close, push, and hold. Discipline made the phalanx near impenetrable. Cohesion turned battles into collisions where momentum broke lines. But it was Spartan audacity and reputation, to stand like an unmovable stone, that made them intimidating. Their very presence on the field could fracture morale long before spears crossed. Thermopylae distilled Spartan terror into a single image: a small body of men holding a mountain pass against a Persian sea. The story of Spartans refusing flight, even in death, burned into Greek memory and into the minds of enemies. Beyond Thermopylae, Sparta enforced its will across Greece with a mix of military might and political ruthlessness, suppressing revolts and keeping rivals uneasy. Spartan terror rested on certainty. If Sparta stood in front of you, you could expect deadly, unflinching resistance. That certainty was contagious. It broke morale before the first clash. Now we shift to an army draped in gold and numbers. Persia's Immortals, elite, emblematic, and feared across 2 continents. Called the Immortals by Greek chroniclers, this unit was the Achaemenid king's personal guard, and the core of Persian field armies. Numbered formally at 10,000, their name implied that a fallen would be instantly replaced, creating the impression of an unending line of men. This symbolism was powerful. To face the Immortals was to confront continuity itself. The Immortals combined spectacle and substance. Clad in distinctive dress, equipped with spears, bows, and sometimes light armor, they could function as shock troops, a rallying center, and a psychological anchor for allied contingents. Their presence, Persian tactics relied on scale and integration. Light cavalry, archers, infantry, and allied contingents created depth and redundancy. The Immortals provided a royal guarantee. If the center held, the empire could still reorganize and counterattack. Even when Persian forces were defeated in specific battles, their capacity to raise fresh armies across a vast territory, drawing manpower from many subject peoples, made resistance a long, exhausting proposition. At Marathon, Thermopylae, and ultimately at Gaugamela, Persia's armies showed both reach and limits. Facing Alexander, Darius III assembled large armies that tested the young conqueror to his limits. Despite tactical defeats, the scale and resilience of Persian forces impressed and overwhelmed many of their foes, who often found themselves fighting not merely an army but an empire's capacity to mobilize. The Immortals merged pageantry and power. Their constantly replenished ranks and royal association created a myth in which enemies felt they fought not men, but an endless tide. A different terror arrives on the wind, light cavalry that moved like storms, the Mongols. Fast, brutal, and strategically ruthless, they reshaped Eurasia. On the steppe, horsemanship and archery were not just skills but ways of life. The Mongol confederations united under charismatic leaders like Genghis Khan, forging groups into an army that prized mobility, discipline, and merit. Leadership emphasized speed of decision, ruthless enforcement of law, and rewards for talent, creating a force that was both flexible and terrifyingly efficient. Mongol tactics were born from the landscape. Composite bows fired from the backs of galloping horses allowed them to strike from distance while retreating. Feigned retreats lured competitors into traps. Their command structure permitted rapid, decentralized action coordinated by clear objectives. Intelligence networks and scouts fed real-time information. When sieges were required, the Mongols adopted engineers and siege techniques from captured specialists, learning to break even the most stubborn city walls. The Mongols perfected the calculus of terror. Their campaigns combined military savagery with strategic incentives. Towns that surrendered were often spared. Those that resisted faced annihilation. News of wholesale massacres spread ahead of the army, turning potential resistance into compliance. They did not simply kill, they rewrote expectations. Of rapid movement, of unpredictable tactics, and of consequences for resistance. From the slaughter of Khwarezm to the sack of Baghdad in 1258, Mongol campaigns erased cities, institutions, and entire centers of learning. The speed and scale of their destruction rewired political calculations across Eurasia. Better to negotiate than to meet the steppe storm head-on. Mongol fear was ambidextrous, both awe at their speed and horror at their calculated brutality. They taught rulers a simple calculus. Flee and live, stand and die. Finally, we arrive at the legions, disciplined, adaptable, and relentless. Rome's soldiers who turned a city-state into a Mediterranean empire. Rome did not invent the soldier, but it systematized war into a civic instrument. From citizen levies to professional legions, Rome built a military machine that combined civic duty with professional skill. Cohorts, manifolds, standardized equipment, and rotating reserves gave Rome an operational depth others lacked. Training made the legionary capable in close combat, engineering, and endurance. Roman tactics fused discipline with engineering. The testudo could protect men from volleys of missiles. Field fortifications turned camps into defensive citadels overnight. Roads, bridges, and fortresses allowed armies to move and supply themselves across hostile land. The legion's flexibility, able to form dense lines for shock, open skirmish formations, or rapid marching columns, made Rome tactically unpredictable for enemies expecting only brute force. Rome's fear often came not from a single battle but from consistency, from the conquests of Gaul to the suppression of revolts, and even in setbacks like Hannibal's victories, the legions demonstrated an ability to recover, adapt, and return. Their march was both military and political. Colonies and garrisons turned conquest into lasting control, transforming cities and regions into reproducible slices of Rome. Towns that resisted faced consequences, while those that cooperated found safety and incorporation into a system that could be brutally efficient. That predictability of outcome, coupled with mechanical competence, turned resistance into a strategic liability. Across these five forces, patterns emerge. Professionalization turns violence into predictable machinery. Mobility makes punishment swift. Siegecraft converts safe refuges into open fields. Psychological warfare, deportation, public display, terrorizing legends, wins battles before armies meet. Each army shaped fear differently. Assyria's institutional cruelty, Sparta's unyielding discipline, Persia's imperial presence, the Mongols' lightning strikes, Rome's administrative inevitability. History remembers not only victories,